Hi guys, welcome to another Ross Perry Productions video and welcome to my 21st video I've now made on the 2009 Jeep Wrangler. Now in this video I'm going to be showing you how to replace the rear brake pads on the car, and this is a relatively easy job and it shouldn't take you more than 15 minutes per side. Now for this job I'm going to be using a Bosch brake pads, and I'll run through the part number for those in just a second. And just to run you through each of the things we're going to need to do this job, I've laid them out on the table here. So we have our standard Jeep Wrangler jack with the wheel brace and extension pieces that come in the boot of the car. I think it's important to do these videos showing that you can actually use basic tools, even the ones that come with the car. That said, I do have some other things here, like the jack stand that you wouldn't normally have, but you can use timber or the spare wheel or something like that. We then have a 13 and 15mm spanner for loosening off the caliper. We have some brake cleaner with some rag and a toothbrush, and then some copper anti-seize grease to put it back together. And then I've got a piston retracting tool there, but you can actually use a G-clamp on this car with your old pad. And then of course I've got our new pads, which I went for Bosch pads. And the part number here is DB2003BL, and it looks like these go for a Jeep Wrangler JK from 2004 and some other models there as well. And then I'm going to go ahead and bleed the brakes. Now I'm not going to make a video on this, but I'll just sort of show you where the bleed nipple is. But here's my standard bleed kit here, with an 11mm spanner for the bleed nipple. Now just remember, on this car it is a .3 brake fluid, not .4. Now the first thing we're going to do is just loosen each of our wheel nuts by about half a turn whilst the car's still on the floor. Once we've done that, we can go ahead, position our jack, lift the wheel off the floor, take the wheel all the way off, and making sure our jack stand is put in a safe place as well. Just to talk you through what we have under here, obviously this is our main disc rotor, and you'll actually notice that it's got a big drum in the middle, which is actually where our parking brake is kept. So there's two brake shoes in there that actually push on the inside of that, and that is operated by this cable here. But now that's actually independent to our normal braking system, which is via this pipe here, going into this caliper, pushing these brake pads onto the actual disc itself. So this is what we're going to be looking at today, and this is what we're going to need our 13mm and 15mm spanner for. So the 13mm goes on the bolt like there, and then the 15 goes just in there. So you're just going to go ahead, start to loosen that, and it shouldn't actually be too tight. So I'm just going to go ahead and take mine all the way out, and then you might want to just get your 13mm spanner and start to loosen the bottom bolt as well. So mine's fairly loose anyway. So there we go, that just drops all the way down, and that will allow us to take out the old brake pads. So this one's not terrible, I've certainly seen worse, but this one is really bad. So you can actually see how thin that's worn. It's almost just metal, and there's no brake left, and you can actually see where it's actually been rubbing onto the rotor itself. So I'll have a quick look around there and make sure the rotor's not damaged. It doesn't feel like it is. I think it's just caught on this edge there. But certainly probably only had a couple of miles or kilometres left in them. And what I'll do is I'll compare these to the new ones so you can actually see how worn they are. Before we do that, I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to clean everything under here. So clean all this brake dust off, and I'm going to use my brake cleaner to do that. Okay, with that all clean now, I'm just going to quickly compare the new pads versus the old pads. And like you can see, this one was in terrible condition and was pretty much at the end of its life. And that is what the new one looks like. Now, you'll see that one of the pads actually has a clip, which is the one on the inside, like that, facing the inside of the car, and then the outside one doesn't have a clip. So even to the point that one of my clips was broken on the old ones. But I'm confident they're exactly the right size and the right shape to go straight on the car. Before we go ahead and actually push the piston back, I do like to just put the tiniest bit of copper grease around it, just to make sure it's clean. Not too much, and you can always wipe off any excess, but just wipe it all the way around. Your dual brake and clutch reservoir is found over the left hand side of the car when you're looking from the front, and it's right near the back at the bulkhead. And what we're going to do is we're just going to take the cap off, put the cap somewhere safe, and that will actually allow the fluid to rise up. So what we want to do is make sure the fluid's not too high, because when we push the piston back, the fluid will rise and we don't want it to spill out over the top there. So I'm comfortable, I've got a spare bit of space in there. So I'm going to go ahead and push my piston back. As I said earlier, I've got a special tool to do this, but you can just use an old brake pad and a G-clamp just to squeeze that back. But like I say, I'm just going to go ahead with my tool. Now when you're screwing that back, you actually don't want to force that all the way in. Just leave it so it's maybe 1-2 millimeters standing out. Making sure our hands are free from grease, we can go ahead and put our new pads in. Remembering the one with the metal clip actually goes on the inside. Just slide it into the bottom first. Rotate it round and push it flat against the disc. I'll show you again with the front one. So bottom in first, rotate it round all the way in towards the disc. Now I'm just going to go ahead and put the tiniest bit of copper grease just on the inside of both of these, and a little tiny bit more on the face of the piston. We can now rotate the caliper back over, lining up the bolt and getting that all the way in. Just tighten it all up by hand first. Then we can get our spanners from earlier and we can tighten it up. Making sure you also tighten up the bottom one. Now we can go ahead, push our foot on the brake, and it will actually centralise the brake. So that's our new pads in and our caliper back assembled. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and bleed the brakes, and that is using that nipple there, which is a 11mm spanner. You just take this rubber boot off there. So I'll just skip ahead to me putting the wheel back on, lowering the car and concluding this video. And there we go, that's my video on how to replace the rear brake pads on a Jeep Wrangler JK model. Now I hope you found this video helpful. If you did, please go ahead and give me the thumbs up, leave me a comment down below, check out some of my other videos and subscribe to my channel.